Hello and welcome to Cargo Masterminds presented by cargo.one. Cargo.one is the leading e-booking platform for air cargo. Over the last years, cargo.one has been rapidly transforming the industry by introducing new ways of distributing and booking real-time air freight capacity. With access to real-time prices and available capacities, freight forwarders of all sizes can search, compare, and book from multiple airlines with immediate confirmation. On the other side of the marketplace, airlines get access to an efficient, data-driven, and fully digital distribution channel, enabling them to sell air cargo capacity in a smarter way. If you would like to learn more about the platform, you can visit cargo.one/cargo masterminds. My name is Reggie John, and you are watching Cargo Masterminds presented by cargo.one. This is our weekly episode where we bring leaders from global logistic companies for a one-to-one conversation. You have heard about Wright brothers, the two American aviation pioneers credited with inventing, building, and flying the world's first successful motor-operated airplane. What about Rangelov brothers, Svilen and Konstantin from Sofia in Bulgaria? One studied economics, the other aerospace engineering. And in 2014, they founded DRONAMICS with a mission to leverage advances in autonomy, aeronautics, and composite materials in order to democratize air freight and accelerate e-commerce in emerging markets. The unmanned cargo aircraft, Black Swan, can transport 350 kilograms at a distance of up to 2,500 kilometers and will radically change the economics, speed, and coverage of same-day delivery. The fixed-wing aircraft, which uses a gasoline engine and a single nose-mounted propeller, can be monitored via satellite, fly into and out of small unpaved airstrips, and could operate at a cost at least 50% lower than conventional human-piloted cargo aircraft. And in the midst of a global pandemic, the Rangelov brothers accelerated the pace of making their dream a reality. They have announced to keep partnership with multinational third-party logistic companies and airports in Europe ahead of the imminent commercial launch of Black Swan as early as next year. Joining me to discuss the hectic pace of development at DRONAMICS is Svilen Rangelov, co-founder and CEO of DRONAMICS. Svilen, welcome to Cargo Masterminds.
Thanks for having me, Reggie.
Svilen, let's, for the benefit of the people watching the video and listening to our conversation, briefly explain what Black Swan, the unmanned aircraft vehicles designed and developed by DRONAMICS. I know I gave them a little brief, but it's good to hear from the founder and the CEO of the company. And this is not the kind of drones that a lot of us have seen, and looks more like an aircraft that requires a runway to take off and land, and not at all a vertical takeoff and landing drone that all of us have seen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's precisely like what you said in the introduction. It's a fixed-wing aircraft with a puller propeller, a Rotax engine, and we designed it to be extremely fuel efficient. And I'm not sure if you see the background, but that's essentially what it looks like. It does not take off vertically. It needs a runway, but the runway is quite short that it can be unpaved, so as little as 400 meters. And you can find runways like that all over the world, even in the tiniest villages. So that's precisely the concept. We are strictly middle mile. It's a middle mile vehicle. We wanted to build essentially the flying version of that ground delivery vehicle.
Bring us up to speed with what is happening in DRONAMICS in terms of partnership. They signed with a number of airports in the Europe and planning to sign up with also airports in other parts of the world. You have like two very significant partnerships signed in the last a month, which is one is a DHL and the other one is Hellman Logistics. Bring us up to speed with what is happening in terms of getting the aircraft takeoff sometime next year.
Yeah, no, it's been quite hectic. We started a company 7 years ago. So and even though the airplane looks quite conventional, it's not. There's been innovation in almost all aspects in it that we had to go through. And earlier this year, the drone rules in Europe finally changed in order to accommodate our aircraft like ours and to make it allowed. So we really stepped on the gas pedal and are investing heavily in commercialization and establishing those first partnerships. So to your point, we signed up already, I believe, 39 airports in Europe, another 20 or so outside of Europe. We signed up DHL, Hellman. There's several others in the pipeline that we have, and yeah, we're gearing up to have first commercial flights early next year.
You have any timeline as to next summer season or next peak holiday season, Q4 of 2022?
Way before that, yeah, summer and possibly even before summer. We're finalizing the licensing, under the new drone rules. We actually have a much shorter certification path than electric powered vehicles, and because there's a lot less risk technologically and operationally as well. So it depends on our development timeline, but also on the regulators. But both of these will converge towards the end of this year, and then early next year we should be able to start those first commercial flights.
How important was getting DHL, one of the very innovative third-party logistic companies in the world, and then before that, Hellman, to come on board? How significant was that for you to get the launch of this project as quickly as next year?
Well, it's quite significant. It's great validation for us. There's other companies that are just as interested. It's just that our resources as a small startup are limited, and we can only work on so many projects at the same time. So we'll be announcing a few of these others immediately. And we've been quite happy and lucky to be supported by companies like that, because it's really nice when you see two of the top 10 forwarders for air freight in the world, place a bet on you. And yeah, we're looking forward to delivering on that.
I remember DHL in their trend radar actually had DRONAMICS being featured. When did you actually begin talking to them, and how serious was this partnership talk in the last few months or last few years? I don't know. When did you start?
Look, it's a small industry, and it relies heavily on relationships, but relationships also take time. So it's been. I honestly couldn't tell you the exact date. It's been a while, but it's also like that for every other partner, right? So they meet you, they hear your plans, and it's all great, but they also want to see validation. And it's, I think, what gets a partner like that over the line is once they see that you execute and you deliver on your plans, and then you're going in the right direction. So it's a relationship, and we enjoy and we cherish that a lot. And that's what we're trying to develop with all the other partners that we are yet to announce. Look, our mission is to democratize air freight, right? To make same-day delivery available to everyone, everywhere, for a price they can all afford. It's a very ambitious goal, and we're going to need all the help we can get. So we're very open to partnerships like that, and we know we cannot do this ourselves, and we're going to need to rely on these relationships that we are building.
Explain to us the business and operating model that you have planned with third-party logistic companies. I hope that there would be like very specific models that you worked around for Hellman and for DHL and the potential other logistic companies. Tell us what is the kind of operational and business arrangement with these companies, with these partners?
Hellman is a pure freight forwarder, right? So we are a middle mile operator. So the same way that a company like theirs would be booking cargo on a regular manned cargo airline with block space agreements, chartering, or what have you. That's same concept will apply to us. So we do not sell the airplanes. We sell capacity. on routes. And those routes, we work with the partners to tell us where they want us to fly. And then on the back end, we figure it out how to make those flights happen in those routes. So we go and look at what are the nearest airports that we can take off and land from. We talk to the airports. We look at schedules and so on. So we try to make it as easy as possible for the customer, for them to book just like they would on another airline, and then work on the back end to deliver on that. Now, the difference between Hellman and DHL, of course, is that DHL has its own last mile fleet worldwide. So it, in terms of customer experience for the two of them, it will be on one hand, it will be owned vehicles, owned ground vehicles that will come to the drone port to pick up the packages once we bring them there. On the other hand, Hellman will be looking with their local partners for the last mile distribution.
Okay, let me understand. You're going to own all the assets, and you are going to sell the capacity. So if that is the case, by next year, like you already have two already signed up, and you potentially will sign up a few more by end of next year. And if your commercial launch happens as planned, by end of next year, how many Black Swans would you have in your fleet?
We plan to have as many as 60. We'll see. We're working with a manufacturing partner to figure out the exact timeline on that as we in ramping up that capacity. But we feel fairly confident we can deploy operationally as many as 60 by the end of the year.
And where do you intend to manufacture these? And would that be also decentralized in terms of you will have manufacturing partners in different parts of the world?
Yes, that's manufacturing partners for each region of the world is the sort of the main scenario that we're exploring. We believe that unlike big airplanes where you have very few numbers, so no company in the world produces more than 1,000 or maybe more than 700 aircraft per year, whereas just for a company like DHL, we estimate we'll need 4,000, and what could even say that this may be conservative. You open the door to actually rethinking of how can you make those airspace parts in a very efficient way, but also in a distributed way. And so, yes, our primary target is to have several facilities around the world. So let's say the drones for the Indian market will be built in India. Drones for the European market will be built in Europe, and so on and so forth.
As of now, where do you have the manufacturing facility? Who's your manufacturing partner?
Right now, we're still doing the manufacturing ourselves. In the process of designing and building the prototype, we actually have produced all the molds, all the tooling. It's also that we can then use those to start the first limited series production while we identify and activate that manufacturing part. So currently, we have a short list of companies, but it's still a process that we're going through to identify the first one.
Svilen, right now you have a very serious imbalance between the supply and demand as far as the freight industry is concerned across. If you look at sea freight, air freight, it is the same, and people want to order plane today and get it delivered yesterday. But then there are no aircraft, and even if it's to be a converted aircraft, you still need about 3 to 4 months. But then there is a long queue outside the conversion companies. How much time does it take for you to have once everything is planned and settled? How much time does it take to produce one Black Swan? 1 day, 2 days, 1 week?
We're looking at doing 5 a week at scale, right? So yeah, that's the plan we're exploring right now.
What would be the cost of producing one of these aircraft?
I can't really talk about that.
Okay.
This would be up for us and the manufacturer to agree on. But yeah, the point is to keep the cost as low as possible and to play on volume, because ultimately that's been one of the curses in aviation, is the more complex and the bigger the system, the less numbers of these systems you build, then the complexity requires such a huge investment that naturally the unit cost just grows exponentially, and it prices out aviation air cargo out of so many markets. And this is the main reason why air cargo serves less than 1% of global trade, but it's the 37% of value. So it's really a mode of last resort. And if you create a model where you're mass producing vehicles because they're smaller and because they can reach smaller destinations directly, and shorten dramatically the last mile, you actually introduce a lot of efficiencies, and then unit costs and all that can go dramatically down, and you can pass those savings on to the customers.
Svilen, what is the reason why you want to keep the asset? Because you are not, you're basically selling the capacity, assets are on your book. What is the reason for that? And would you potentially look at lessors later on that somebody else actually will buy these assets, but and then they can actually lease it to or sell the capacity to freight forwarders, shippers, or any other operators?
Well, that's a great question. And if you think about the early days of aviation, it was not uncommon for aircraft developers to also be to also be the operator. So you know that Boeing for a period of time used to carry used to fly for the U.S. Postal Service, and it took antitrust regulations in order for them to get broken up into Boeing and United Airlines. So same way applies here. When you're in the early days of this new unmanned technology, it pays to be close to the operations so that you can learn operationally daily and integrate this into product improvements. In essence, we are open to lessors and a relationship with a lessor, but in the early days, we plan to own and control the fleet ourselves.
Svilen, you said that that's your very conservative estimate by end of next year. As of the partnership arrangement that you have announced so far and potentially announcing in the next few months, you would have about 60 aircraft by end of next year. And if you had to be really optimistic and really need to really scale up your production and to meet the demand, given the condition that air freight is very constrained as of now and continue to remain constrained next year, how confident are you that you can really scale up the production with partners in manufacturing at different places?
We're very confident. There's actually been a lot of excess capacity on the market when it comes to manufacturing capabilities. So we're not really worried about the manufacturing side of things.
Let me come to your partnership with signing up with the different airports, because your aircraft still needs an airport infrastructure, at least some unpaved runway of 400 meters. What kind of handling support do you require at the airport, and who is that going to provide, and what kind of fees are required to be paid at the airport? Will it be the very similar as any other airline?
These are great questions. We are like another airline, so we will pay the rent, landing fees, and all that. But cargo handling we do ourselves, and the reason is, again, because these are the early days. We would need to keep that learning very quick so that we can make adjustments as we go. And then once this whole thing matures, then we can think about potentially outsourcing that to a cargo handling partner.
What are the potential chances of maybe a warehouse which has got a 400-meter airstrip on an open space? Could that be a place where you can take off and land? Do you really need an airport?
Absolutely, it could. Yeah, we do not need an airport. We're starting with airports because these are areas that are already integrated into sort of the airspace and operations. But phase two would be doing off-airport locations like warehouses. Seaports would be another exciting type of location. Yeah, logistics centers, farms. There's a wide variety of spaces around the world. But even if you stick to just airfields, there's more than 50,000 or 55,000 airfields around the world. So there's plenty of touch points to serve, even if you stick to only them.
So I want a bit curious to understand how do you load cargo into it? Is there a palletization of the cargo, or is there boxes that you can just fill into the aircraft and it takes off? What are some of those details?
It's loose cargo, so just boxes. It's not palletized. It's loaded by hand. We opted for the the simplest possible way. Initially, we wanted to make, again, the biggest beneficiaries of our system would be underserved communities, and the great majority of those are smaller communities where you may have very little traffic and where 350 kilos may be sufficient to serve. So we wanted to make something that is essentially village friendly, and that's why we're not opting out for any fancy like automated loading systems or pods or any of that, because it's just not our market. These would be great for some other markets, but not for ours.
Your aircraft is still an unmanned aircraft when it comes to the cargo air. In the aviation side, the utilization, the asset is the maximum of 16, 17, 18 hours, for example. Then you have a mandatory rest period and maintenance and check period for the aircraft. Can your aircraft fly 24/7?
Like every other aircraft, it needs to have different levels of maintenance checks after a certain amount of hours of operation. But as in our case, the pilots are on the ground at those drone ports because we do have human pilots. They're just not in the vehicle, and this makes it a lot easier to have the pilot's shift end before that flight's journey has ended. In that sense, yes, it is a true 24/7 capability that you can provide.
Going by the current numbers, 60 aircraft by the end of next year, almost 39 airports that you have signed up, maybe that you fly each of these aircraft 20 hours a day. You need a lot of human resource also in terms of handling these aircraft at the airports. What kind of buildup are you looking at by the end of next year? What is the number of people that would be working for you?
We will not be launching in 39 airports on day one, so there will be a ramp up. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we're looking at several hundred. We need at each airport, we need a team of 5 to start, and then this may grow depending on the number of flights that are being served and the times of day that those movements are happening. So you are right. In the beginning, it is very human heavy, but I would say that this would be true for any type of unmanned operation, because as much as everyone wants it, true autonomy is very far from being certified. So you always need to have a substantial amount of humans involved in the operation. Yeah, that's the true benefits come at scale. The good thing about our platform is, because of that, we really worked hard to make sure the aircraft is both cheaper to own but also cheaper to operate than other aircraft, so that we could absorb that additional fixed costs in the early days, and we can hit break even a lot quicker.
What is your current strength? How many people work across 2 offices, I believe?
Yeah, so we are now partly a distributed team, but the bulk of the team is in Bulgaria. So we are now, I believe, more than 70 people. I can't tell you the exact number because I've been focused on fundraising lately, but for reference, this time last year we were less than 25. So we're growing fast. We'll probably at least double within the next 6 to 9 months.
If it is one of your aircraft fully loaded, once it lands, you need to unload and it fills the cargo and takes off. What is the turnaround time?
I'm not sure I can say yet, but yeah, we have yet to test. But it will be, it should be very, very quick. It also depends on the number of people. So if it's 5 people, like we plan to have in Europe first, it should be, we should be able to do multiple turnarounds in an hour. But if it is, flying to a village and it's 1 flight per day, it probably doesn't make sense to have 5 people. It could be just 1 or 2 that can manage the whole process, and it will probably take them longer time.
Tell us about the operational cost of a Black Swan. How much does it cost to operate a fully loaded Black Swan at its maximum range?
That's a great question, but I'll probably not be able to talk about that at this moment.
I'm sure that you must be doing all this kind of calculations right now as you sign up partners like DHL and Hellman.
Yeah, no, we are, but it is also The price also depends on the market. What are the alternatives? How much do they cost? And prices can vary a lot on the routes. But for guidance, okay, let me say that we can definitely do a kilogram in Europe for a couple of euros, right? And this could still make sense for us. And it may sound high compared to belly freight, but for example, in a market like Europe, intra-European connectivity is not great. You always need to go through hubs, and there's not that many direct flights. Most of the traffic, the air traffic in Europe is low-cost carriers, and all the major ones don't do any cargo. They don't bother with belly because it hurts their turnaround times, and they just focus on passenger. So we are actually quite relevant for a broad base of customers with prices of this magnitude.
I also want to come to your point of sustainability, and you said the carbon neutral by 2023 and carbon negative by 2027. How much of your operational cost would depend also on the fluctuation of the oil market?
Yeah, so we actually use gasoline. So the engine we use is made by Rotax. It's a very well-known certified aviation engine. Lots of light aircraft have that. So it's a fuel-efficient engine to begin with, but with our extremely fuel-efficient airframe, the efficiencies are even bigger. So much so that unlike a traditional cargo airline, the proportion of fuel cost for us is in the single digits of percent. So in other words, fluctuations on the oil market are indistinguishable for our cost base.
Let me come to another important topic, which is the safety of these unmanned aircraft. That's one of the biggest concern. These are unmanned aircraft, and what kind of safety these are being controlled by computer coding and software. What are the precautions that you are taking so that the civil aviation authorities will give you the permission, okay, take off and land?
The answer lies with civil aviation authorities. Interestingly, I mean, it's natural that they've been thinking about those same questions for a very long time. For not just for us, but for any type of drone developer, any flying thing that has the capability to be controlled remotely or to make its own decisions or somehow be automated. So we're just following whatever the regulators decide, and that's why these new drone rules in Europe are so important, because for the first time they introduced this risk-based approach where they say, okay, if your type of operations is this, then we need you to meet that kind of bar. But if you change your operations and they have a different risk profile, then the bar changes. And based on that, securing the communications is a big factor, and all of that. So it's almost like they've set the bar, and you just need to work to meet that bar.
About your funding that you did mention that you're right now working on funding, and I think the kind of scale up that you will see in the coming months, you need that kind of funding. And we also done some projections in terms of 2.1 billion in revenue if something like a DHL or that kind of a partnership. How seriously are you looking at? You need a lot of money to scale up your operation. What is the scene on the funding?
Luckily, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of money in the market right now. It's a good time to be fundraising. There's been more and more interest naturally, but I can't talk in great detail about that. To an increasing number of people, our model makes a lot of sense. That's what I can say.
Approximately how much would you want to have, or would the funding that you need to raise to have that kind of a scale up operation by next year end?
In the words of Austin Powers, 1 billion. No, we'll see. It's part of the plan. It's part of the ramp up. The manufacturing partnership will play a big role in that. So the exact commercial terms, the ramp up, all of that, we'll have yet to see. But it is a business that requires a lot more capital than pure software plays or more asset light businesses.
Svilen, if I were to ask you, who is your competitor from the other modes of transport, and who is your competitor within the cargo drone space? Not too many people have seen a fixed wing unmanned aerial vehicle. who would be some of your competitors?
I know it kind of sounds bad, but we don't see almost anyone to be a competitor, and it's simply because we are the only fixed-wing drone that is specifically targeting middle mile, and we are not really relevant for those shorter distances of up to 100 or 200 kilometers that vertical takeoff aircraft are actually great at. So what they're good at, we're bad at, and what we're good at, they're just unable to serve. Yeah, that's, when it comes to other modes of transportation, depends on the route, on that route. Initially, we're targeting routes where there's no aircraft, there's no air cargo traffic. So people's only alternative is truck, but these would be routes where the trucking takes a long time, maybe 2 days or more. And ultimately, both the truckers and the customers would be happy for this to happen in another quicker fashion. But yeah, we're talking about a comparison between, again, air cargo and trucking, where there's, in most markets, for every kilogram that flies, you have 10,000 kilograms that go by road. So it's quite substantial difference.
Svilen, I would want to kind of also take a look at the entire cargo drone ecosystem. We see a tremendous amount of growth that we have seen over the last 2 years. A lot of money being pumped in by private equity venture capital funds. We have seen some of very good case studies and how things are being quite successful, not only on the fixed wing unmanned aircraft range, but on the vertical takeoff and landing varieties. We have seen coffees and soft drinks being delivered in Ireland and other places. We also seen the advanced economies like Japan and the US really embracing these models. What are your thoughts on the cargo drone ecosystem right now?
It's the regulations changing was perhaps the biggest possible technological enabler, because technology already existed to an extent. A lot of the capabilities for, in a small drone, you have these GPS units and the accelerometers and so on. They're tiny enough and light enough and cheap enough due to them being made so by mobile phones. So the technology had already transformed in a sense. The components were there. What was missing was the regulation piece, and that's what's really opened up the market. And we're going to see more and more news around the world about that. And innovators from any country will be going after these markets in cargo and in all the other potential applications. If you think about it, humans, we are, 99.999% of our lifetime we spend it in 2 dimensions. There's this third dimension that we're barely exploring. We've only had aviation for 100 years of humanity. So it is exciting times. And we need to, of course, everyone needs to make sure that safety is everyone's #1 priority, but technology will get there, and will ensure that, and everyone will be able to get the benefits of that. Yeah, we will get to benefit a lot more from our utilization of the third dimension. We're personally really happy to take part in that, but we're also very excited to see what everyone else is working on.
You said DRONAMICS do not really have a competition, but when you look at the cargo drone ecosystem, which are not the companies, which are those cargo drones that you keenly look out for, watch out for?
The best way to think about us is like an airline. We are an airline, and an airline may have Airbus planes, they may have Boeing planes, they may have ATR. Ultimately, that's another reason why we don't perceive other companies as competitors, is because at some point they could be potential partners, right? And we see them make a lot of progress, and we're very happy about that. It's on our side, we welcome any great piece of news in this emerging industry, because the benefits, again, of using the third dimension will be great, but there is a long way to get there, and we alone cannot do it. Everyone else needs to do their part. So, to be honest, if you ask me to for some sort of ranking and so on, I wouldn't be able to do that because I'm too focused on our own business. But yeah, I also believe that if for a large period of time we ourselves were ignored, maybe because we're doing this in Eastern Europe, in a country that hasn't built airplanes in 70 years and so on. So I do know that innovation can come out of any corner of the world, and I've learned not to underestimate anyone. So when I say that we don't have competition, I don't mean it in the fact that I underestimate everyone. On the contrary, I just believe any one of them could be very, very successful. It's just that it's such a huge market that it's not a zero-sum game.
Svilen, it was a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you and your team all the best.
Thank you, Reggie. Thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. Really looking forward to speaking to you again.
That was Svilen Rangelov, co-founder and CEO of DRONAMICS. I hope you enjoyed watching this interview. If you like what we do, please do share this video among your social networks. Also, if you are not a subscriber of our YouTube channel, please do subscribe now and click the bell icon so that you do not miss any of our new videos. Join me next Monday as I bring a new guest for a one-to-one conversation here in Cargo Masterminds, presented by cargo.one. Take care, stay safe. Thank you.